Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the absolute wildest, decades-long deceptions in modern history. Seriously, we're talking about a massive, highly classified intelligence op that didn't just sit back and watch world politics. It literally shaped it for over half a century. It's this crazy story of mechanical genius, deep espionage, and a Trojan horse that sat right on the desks of governments all around the world.
Okay, let's dive into this. To really wrap our heads around the scale of this thing, let's go back to a massive international crisis. The year is 1979. The US Embassy in Tehran has just been stormed by radical supporters of the Islamic Revolution. 52 US citizens are taken captive, and they're going to be held hostage for a grueling 444 days. Now, in the months following the capture, President Jimmy Carter is desperately trying to negotiate with the Iranian militants. But since the US and Iran aren't exactly on speaking terms directly, these negotiations are run through Algeria, acting as a mediator. Naturally, the comms between Algeria and Iran are heavily encrypted. Iran is totally convinced their back channels are secure. But here's the kicker. After every single exchange, President Carter knew exactly what the Iranians were saying to each other.
So, it brings us to the big, central mystery of this explainer, right? How on earth did President Carter know what the Iranians were saying behind closed doors? I mean, back in 1979, decrypting sovereign backchannel communications in real time? That was basically impossible. If the math behind the algorithms was sound, breaking them would take unimaginable computing power. It really should have been a complete dead end for American intelligence.
Well, the shocking answer points straight to a seemingly neutral little company in Switzerland called Crypto AG. For decades, they were the absolute gold standard for global secure communications, right? They sold high-end encryption devices to over 100 countries. But they held a massive, dark secret. Crypto AG was secretly co-owned by the CIA and Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, the BND. Yeah, you heard that right. The spy agencies literally owned the company making the locks.
Part 1. Building the Trojan Horse.
This whole operation actually kicked off right after World War II, thanks to a friendship between two incredibly brilliant minds, a Swedish inventor named Boris Hägglund and the American military's leading cryptologist, William Friedman. Now, Friedman realized pretty quickly that if Hägglund started selling his top-tier devices all over the globe, the US would be completely deaf to the world's communications. To grasp the absolute genius of what they did next, we kind of need to look at the tech. Hägglund built cipher machines. At their core, these are just mechanical devices that take your ordinary sentences and turn them into an illegible jumble of letters. Take his famous CX-52 model, for example. Both the sender and the receiver needed the exact same physical machine. You'd set a daily key, which is basically the machine's default setting for that day, and then a short-term message key for your specific transmission. As you typed, these rotating internal wheels would shift the letters, spitting out a seemingly random code. It was incredibly complex and honestly, for its time, considered completely uncrackable.
And this brilliantly illustrates the core of the deception. The CIA basically convinced Hägglund to build two completely different versions of his machines. Thing 1 was an unbreakable, highly secure variant reserved strictly for countries the US considered allies. Thing 2, a rigged variant pushed on the rest of the world. Inside these rigged machines, 30 out of the 32 internal sliding bars were totally blocked by metal discs. I mean, they were effectively deadweight. What this did was eliminate the randomness, creating these predictable, easily crackable patterns for US intelligence to read.
The source material uses this absolutely perfect analogy for it. They were like locks that clicked, but never really snapped shut. Just think about that. Customers using the rigged variants genuinely thought their machines were airtight. They followed the manuals perfectly, they heard the gears churning, they saw the jumbled letters come out. They were completely unaware that the mathematical algorithms were purposefully weakened right there on the factory floor.
Part 2. The secret takeover.
Now, what started out as a friendly handshake agreement escalated into a full-blown financial takeover. The CIA didn't just want to limit where the good machines went, they wanted to buy up basically the entire global encryption market to make sure everyone was using their rigged tech. It all started with an initial payout of $700,000. That's what the CIA paid Hägglund just to restrict his sales of the highly secure models to approved countries, kind of making up for the business he was leaving on the table.
But as the Cold War really started heating up, the CIA wanted more. So they paid Hägglund another $900,000, which, to put that into perspective, would be roughly $10 million today, plus a $70,000 annual retainer. And this wasn't just to restrict sales anymore. This was to actively market and aggressively push those rigged variants to as many governments globally as they possibly could. Hägglund went from being a helpful ally to an active asset right on the payroll.
Fast forward to 1970, and Hagelin is looking to retire. That's when the CIA and the German BND made their ultimate move. Using a shell company hidden away in the microstate of Liechtenstein, the two agencies just outright bought Crypto AG for 25 million Swiss francs. That was over $5,750,000 at the time. They had total secret control. Actually, right around this exact same time, Hagelin's son Bo, who had strongly opposed this whole operation, died in a really tragic car crash near Washington, D.C., which led Hagelin to fully step away from the company for good.
Part 3. Listening in on history.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because with total ownership secured, these intelligence agencies entered a completely new era. They basically bought themselves a front-row seat to global history. By 1978, they were actively monitoring the Argentine dictatorship. By 1982, they had their eyes all over the Falklands War. And in 1986, they were intercepting Libyan communications right before the Berlin disco bombing retaliation.
Let's look a bit closer at the direct consequences of those intercepts, because the human cost here is staggering. During the 1982 Falklands War, the US and Germany intercepted Argentina's compromised comms and secretly funneled that data over to Britain, which ultimately led to the sinking of the Belgrano cruiser and the deaths of 300 people. Or take 1986, after the La Belle nightclub bombing in Berlin. President Reagan blamed Libya almost instantly. Why? Because Libyan orders were intercepted straight through their rigged Hagelin machines. And then, during Argentina's dirty war in 1978, the CIA and BND decrypted horrific messages detailing how the military junta was flying thousands of dissidents out over the Atlantic and dropping them to their deaths. The intelligence agencies held this critical intelligence in their hands, yet they remained bystanders.
It brings up the absolute ultimate moral dilemma of espionage. It's beautifully, if grimly, captured by this quote from the investigation. Do you act on it, or do you risk ruining that access going forward? During the Cold War, acting on intelligence to save lives meant risking the exposure of the exact secret that allowed you to gather that intelligence in the first place. It's just a brutally cold calculation of geopolitics.
Part 4. The cover unravels.
Look, no secret of this magnitude can stay buried forever, right? It all came crashing down in this crazy domino effect of whistleblowers. First, back in 1977, Crypto's top engineer, Peter Frutiger, had a massive crisis of conscience after he personally went and upgraded the Shah of Iran's security, knowing full well the machines were compromised. He resigned and actually went to the Swiss authorities. But the real catalyst didn't happen until 1992. Hans Buehler, who was a top crypto salesman and genuinely had zero idea the machines were rigged, was arrested in Iran. The Iranians suspected foul play and they interrogated him for 9 brutal months. Finally, the German BND secretly paid a $1 million ransom just to free him. Deeply traumatized and then shockingly fired by his own company the second he returned, Buehler started connecting the dots and took his suspicions straight to the global press.
As you can imagine, the fallout was immense. Countries like Argentina and Italy immediately canceled their contracts. By 1993, the German BND, pretty damaged by the massive public controversy and the sheer political discomfort of it all, decided to pull out of the operation entirely. But the US? They didn't even blink. The CIA simply bought out the BND's share for $17 million and quietly kept running the rigged machines all on their own. And honestly, this is the wildest part. They kept the operation going completely solo all the way until 2018.
So the crucial point is how we actually know all of this with such absolute certainty today. In 2018, the CIA finally officially wound down the operation. And then, just 2 years later, in 2020, a 96-page classified internal CIA history report, codenamed Minerva, was leaked. The Washington Post, teaming up with German and Swiss broadcasters ZDF and SRF, analyzed this massive document and published the global story, finally proving this decades-long deception to the world once and for all.
Part 5. Modern Echoes of Rubicon.
Now, sure, those old mechanical cipher machines belong in museums now, but the relationship between private technology and global intelligence, that is still incredibly relevant today. See, that leaked Minerva report contained a few other truly explosive details. It revealed the code names Olympia and Navajo. These referred to massive tech conglomerates Siemens and Motorola. According to the investigation, Siemens was actually advising Crypto AG on business and tech issues and taking a 5% cut of the sales. Meanwhile, Motorola was brought in a bit later by the US. So it wasn't just some boutique Swiss firm. Major international tech giants were deeply woven into this whole web.
And that brings us right to our modern landscape. Today, telecommunications and big tech companies are frequently compelled by law to assist in government surveillance. We see intelligence agencies regularly pressuring massive corporations like Google, Microsoft, and Verizon, arguing that having access to user data is absolutely essential for things like stopping terror attacks. The Cold War might be over, but the line between our private tech infrastructure and global intelligence gathering isn't just blurring anymore. In a lot of ways, it's structurally intertwined by modern law.
Which leaves us to ponder this final, really provocative question. Which modern tech companies might be secretly cooperating with intelligence agencies today? I mean, Operation Rubicon completely proves that a massive intelligence op can successfully hide inside a trusted private company for over half a century. It really makes you wonder what the digital equivalents of those rigged cipher machines look like right now, sitting right in our pockets. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep asking the big questions.